Right. So, in this video, I didn't know what to make, like every other video, until I was listening to someone playing the piano, and it brought back memories. You see, when I was a young kid, I started playing the piano when I think I was 4, and then we had a little two-octave little keyboard, and yeah, I'm gonna make that. I need a new piano to help me practice, and so I'm going to build one. Problem is, I'm not gonna build a full-on grand piano, because I have a life. Oh no, I don't. So what I'm gonna do instead is just build a little 2-octave, so 15-note keyboard out of wood, metal, and a whole bunch of magic electricity stuff. Here we have the whiteboard. Now, I don't actually have a whiteboard because I don't have enough money to buy a whiteboard. So if you could go on and subscribe, that would mean quite a lot, because that's one step closer to monetization, which is one step closer to me getting enough money to buy a whiteboard. So instead, I've got a whole bunch of paper, and we're gonna go through that now. This is the whiteboard. Boom. Now, so realistically, when you think about it, there are 3 parts to making a keyboard. There's the part to do with sound, so there. You've got the part to do with electricity. I don't think there's a third part. The third part is having fun along the way. So how am I actually going to make this, you ask? What I'm going to do is get a long piece of wood. That is our long piece of wood. And I'm going to cut it into several sections. That's scissors, so I'm going to cut down there. Not with scissors. And I'm going to cut 15 pieces of wood to make a keyboard. So I'm going to then have 15 pieces of wood side by side like that. Boom. So that's how I'm going to build it. Now, let's look at each individual key, each individual pressy thing. So let's draw it up here. So that's one of the things that you're going to press to play the piano. You press down on the thing and it plays. Now over here, I'm going to have a little metal contact. That's the little triangle. So this is metal. I'm going to have a pivot here, so a rod going through the middle, and I'm going to have a spring here pulling it up that way so that it stays horizontal to begin with. Then when you the metal contact is going to be here, sorry. So the metal is there, and there's going to be a sheet of metal underneath it like that. Now when you press down on here to play, this metal touches that metal, circuit complete, electricity can flow, voila. So, I've just spent the last, I don't know how long, cutting this. These are 15 pieces of wood, and they are the 15 pieces of wood that I'm going to be using as the white keys of the piano. So what I'm going to do now is find a way of putting them all together. In an ideal scenario, I would have a wooden dowel, so a piece of wood in a circle shape going across. Problem is, I don't have any, like a cylinder of wood to make as a pivot, like sort of an axle. Problem is, I don't have one, so I'm gonna have to find a replacement to use as the pivot for the notes, for the keys to go rotate around. This is a firework. Quite cool. However, I'm not going to use it for just the firework aspect. Well, not at all for the firework aspect. What I'm going to use instead is this bit, the wooden bit. Now, if you look closely, it is still a cuboid, so it's still not round, which would be ideal. So this isn't ideal, but if I make the hole through the keys big enough, it doesn't matter if it's roughly between like a cuboid shape, it will still rotate. Oh yeah, I'll explain this in a bit. I was meant to have 15 keys, but if you're any good at counting, you can see that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. What's that for? Well, I accidentally snapped off a bit at the end, which is a problem. So to drill a hole big enough for this piece of wood to go through, I had to use this big of a drill bit. Unfortunately, I didn't have a clamp, so I tried to hold it myself, and in doing so I drilled my hand, which is, yeah, a bit of a problem. I also accidentally cut my lip with a saw as well, which is slightly unfortunate, but this works really well so far. I had to put in these little screws in between them so that when I move this one down, it doesn't interfere with that one. Now, when I push them down so far, the whole thing turns, so I'm going to have to glue that piece of wood in place. Ta-da! Look at it. Look how great it is. It's actually really good. So you've got all the keys set up here, and if we turn it round, like so, without actually dropping it on the floor, this is what it looks like from the back. So you've got all of these wires all of these pieces of wood, the keys, connected by springs to this plank of wood, which keeps them from going like sort of that way. So what we want to do is turn them this way, right? So you can press down like on a normal piano, but we don't want them to turn the other way, which is what this plank of wood is stopping. And we're also using this as springs so that when you press down, the key returns back to its original place. So I've got the first key with all the screws screwed in. Obviously all of these are going to have screws as well, but I've just got this for now. So what happens is when you a positive terminal of the battery is going to be connected to here and a negative to here. What that means is that so far they're not touching. Circuit's not complete. Nothing's going to happen. 0 volts is really being read by the Arduino. But when you press them together, bam, look, they're touching. That means that a circuit is now complete. A voltage is now being read in the Arduino. This key is now detected as having been pressed down. A note will be played. C, I think that's 256 hertz, because that's middle C. So, Chris, you ask, describe your experience of soldering all this electronics and putting it all in place in one word. Hell. This is absolute torture. I spent the last 3 hours trying to get the first set of wires in. Admittedly, I had a break in the middle, but still, it is hell. I will explain what I mean. Let's look at it from this angle. So all the keys are in here. All of these screws connected to the keys have a wire going to a positive terminal on the breadboard, so they're going to have the positive terminals. These are all the positive part of the switches. And all of these screws where the metal touches, like so, all these are connected to the negative terminals, and right now they're basically all acting as switches, and they're all in parallel, as we can see over here on this absolute nightmare of a piece of this absolute nightmare of some electronics. I have just spent the last 2 hours pressing a switch down and out, down and up, again and again and again and again, and it works. So what I've got here is the keyboard, all the electronics, my Arduino, and the serial open on my laptop, reading out the number 1 at the moment. And when I press it down, it changes to 0. It's amazing. It's amazing. So here's the keyboard with all the wires attached, and here's the code. And what I've basically written it to do is that if this key, which is the C, middle C, gets pressed, then play middle C, and let's see. My first rendition ever on this keyboard. today we're going to make earth music. So what I've done is get the keys, and each time you press the key, it plays a note of a random frequency between 0 and 1000 hertz, completely random, for 1/10 of a second, and then it moves on to another note, and it sounds like this. What I've done now is get every single note on here, and when I press one of the keys, it plays around that note. So like this. It's roughly whatever that note is, but give or take a little bit every so often. So thank you for watching that video. If you enjoyed it, just smash that like button, absolutely butcher that subscribe button. And yeah, so I'm going to make loads more videos. I'm going to make another one soon, starting in about an hour. So please subscribe.